We are back here on the GSMC Chip Shot Football Podcast to talk a little bit more of the Monday Night Football game that we just saw. And going over, we talked about the basics about the Jets' loss to the San Francisco 49ers back on Monday, but now we can look into it a little bit more. What is the biggest concern that the Jets have to try and figure out here going forward? Where, my overall thought from the game on Monday was that, the scoreline looked a little bit bad. It looked like the 49ers dominated, and they did in a sense with the running game and the time of possession, but I felt like the Jets didn't look like a team that had no idea what they were doing or anything like that. It looked like they had good players, right? They had the ability of putting some drives together. Their defense is obviously stacked, and I feel like they're going to figure some things out. And what that is, we're going to get into it in this segment. But, looking back on it, I feel like, again, people expected this game to be closer, especially with Rodgers coming off of an injury-riddled year. He finished 13 of 21 for 167 yards and 1 touchdown and an interception. And looking at this game now, I mentioned it yesterday how it was a reality check for the New York Jets going up against the 49ers, because obviously the 49ers are the standard in the NFC conference, at least. This could go to the NFL, on a more league-wide basis, but, this just gave the Jets a good look at what a real contender looks like, how they play like, what their defense is like, and just the game planning in every aspect of a true contending team. Now the Jets know what level they have to reach at least to compete with some of these teams, right? Because as good as the 49ers are, all the other teams in the conference, in the AFC, there's a lot of good teams there as well. You could face the Texans, the Ravens as well. The Dolphins are still there, obviously, in the division. The Bengals didn't look awful. They still could get better. It was only 1 week. As much as I am concerned about their offense, they do still have good players. Overall, the Colts didn't look too bad also in that game. So there are a lot of good teams that the Jets have to play eventually. So knowing what level they have to reach, I think will serve them well. And after the loss, Aaron Rodgers talked about it a little bit more on what he felt this team had to work itself through to kind of get to that level, and what he saw went wrong in this game against the San Francisco 49ers, to which he said there were moments that felt really good but not sustained. We felt like if we could just get a first down, we'd be rolling. We had those 3 and outs, which really hurt us. I think a lot of stuff is correctable, which is great for coaches, but frustrating for players. We know how close we were / are, but there's no time. For that. But there is time for that. Excuse me, there for that last part. And that's really kind of the same sentiment I share with Aaron Rodgers and what he's talking about. They do have the benefit of having time on their side, but also, he mentioned that a lot of stuff is correctable, and those 3 and outs is also something that I wanted to point out. He just said, if we could just get a first down, we'd be rolling. We had those 3 and outs that really hurt us. And you look at some of the stats from this game to kind of support that sentiment. You look at Rodgers and the offense only mustered 266 total yards on offense, which you look at just that and it might not seem too bad. But the 49ers, in comparison in their offense, they totaled over 400 total yards of offense without Christian McCaffrey. So missing their best player, still almost doubling your yards in that entire game says a lot about the difference in where each offense is at this point in time. The biggest talking point also, I feel like, was the time of possession. The Jets had about 21 minutes and 20 seconds of possession of the ball in this game, which was the lowest time of any of Aaron Rodgers' 26 career starts. That's the lowest amount of time on offense he has been able to have the ball, and it just emphasizes the dominance that the 49ers had again in that game with the way they were able to run the ball. They were able to dominate on defense, going back to those 3 and outs. As much as the 49ers were doing good on offense, if you can go back and forth with them, it doesn't really affect you too much. But when Rodgers is mentioning those 3 and outs, and then I think it was from the second quarter or potentially the third quarter on, once the 49ers took the lead essentially, they just got into all of their sets. They knew exactly what they were running. They were very efficient, very accurate with everything, and they just took off from there. The Jets never really caught up after that point, and the possession of the ball went a lot to do with it. The offense remained cold for the 49ers, or for the Jets, excuse me. They came into this game still trying to figure a couple things out. Mike Williams only played 9 snaps, and the offensive line couldn't get anything going for Breece Hall as well. Rodgers was a bit inaccurate at times with a couple of placement on his throws, but overall, I thought he looked solid. I thought that some of the drops that these guys had didn't help him too much, but that is and can be correctable going forward. The defense is better than this performance. Obviously, Hassan Reddick's case for an extension also goes up after this with how vulnerable the Jets defense looks, not really getting any pass rush to Brock Purdy, which helped their efficiency. He didn't throw off any timing or anything. Brock sat back there most of the game and was pretty comfortable, it seemed, trying to pick off this Jets defense. And they have great players, right, with Quincy Williams, Sauce Gardner, obviously, but every good team like this, at least to this level, needs a pass rush. And Jermaine Johnson is a good player, but you still need, I think, somebody else on the edge to give you that other presence. And, you're going up against Trent Williams as well. So if you don't have one of the premier guys to kind of give him something there to worry about, it's going to be a long day. And that's exactly what it was for the Jets in this game. But I do expect them to get better. They have enough players to perform better than this, and they play some weaker teams, I guess you could say, to kind of ease it up a little bit and kind of gain some confidence back as well. But to me, the biggest issue is a combination of a few different things with this team, right? It was the time of possession, the game planning, and just how they really lacked playing complementary football with their offense and their defense as well. And that's in large part, obviously, with how well the 49ers played. But while the offense still needs to get better, keeping the ball through the run game with Breece Hall and the wide receivers just getting open outside of Garrett Wilson, I mentioned those concerns yesterday. Garrett looked great. Garrett, early with Aaron Rodgers, made some good connections. I think that drive that they scored a touchdown, they might have connected on 3 straight or 4 straight passes or something like that. That looks like a strong connection, but Allen Lazard, had a couple drops, didn't really get into the ebbs and flows of everything. Mike Williams, I mentioned, only played 9 games, and then outside of that, you have Xavier Gibson, who is a nice player, but I don't think he really affected the game at all. So you need some of the wide receivers to give you more than just Garrett Wilson can give you, because just like Jamar Chase, teams are going to take him away, and then who's going to step up for this Jets team and a 40-year-old quarterback that needs help at this stage in his career to kind of, give you what everybody's hoping that a quarterback like Aaron Rodgers can provide for your team. Similarly, with Breece Hall, this offensive line looked pretty decent in pass blocking, but run blocking, Breece never really found any momentum early outside of that drive where he scored the touchdown. And then, like it typically goes, you go behind and you kind of abandon the run game. And Breece can get involved in the passing game, but, you need that run game a little bit to kind of keep the defense on their toes. The 49ers just sat back most of it and forced Aaron Rodgers into these tough, tight throws where they had great coverage because they knew that the Jets were just not going to run the ball anymore. So they were able to kind of game plan, anticipate these passes, and make it even harder for Aaron Rodgers. And also, with both of those factors coming into play, it comes just down to the fact that with both of those things just not working, you find yourself in a lot of 3rd and longs. With a 40-year-old quarterback, again, it's not a situation you want to be in. It's not to discredit Aaron Rodgers or anything like that. He's only going to get better from this point on. But this team is supposed to work and supposed to be really good because Aaron is a good quarterback, but no good quarterback, unless you're in the prime of your career and you're Patrick Mahomes at this point, is capable enough to go out there with only one good wide receiver, no running game, and just not really trusting the other weapons on their offense. This is supposed to work because Rodgers, coming into this team, they were able to address the wide receiver 2 position. They had more protection on that offensive line. The defense as well going back to that complementary factor, was good enough to stop opposing offenses to give these guys a chance. But none of that was really in display, and that's where you get this lackluster performance from Rodgers and the New York Jets as a whole. You don't want to be in third and longs the entire game because it's not going to be efficient. It's not going to be progressive in matchups against the 49ers or the Dolphins or these teams that can score and can really run up the score on you. And if your defense isn't stopping anyone, then I don't think this offense right now is comfortable enough with each other to go toe-to-toe with some of these offenses. The defense, again, needs to be complementary with this offense as well. They need to be better. I believe they will be better. And they just need to get the ball back to Aaron Rodgers, essentially, because this is supposed to be the most reliant. They're supposed to be the more reliant side of this football team because they've been together. They brought basically everybody back, and it just was absent in this first game as well. You can't rely on Aaron Rodgers to score every drive at this stage of his career. It's not sustainable for him to carry the pressure of the entire organization as much as he's already doing it with how much he's talking, with how much stock is being invested in him to, pretty much carry this organization on the field. Somebody has to step up aside of him, Garrett Wilson, and Breece Hall. The defense, again, needs to step up, and at least until they're fully acclimated, right? This offense isn't truly there all of yet, but right now it was a good point to see, all right, we have to work on this. The defense needs to get better. Who's going to step up outside of Garrett Wilson? Now you have your goals, right? Your marking points, your check marks or whatnot. Now you know what you need to work on, and the season's a long one. Obviously, they have a tough schedule coming up in terms of traveling and things like that, but they do face, I think, the Titans, and then maybe the other teams are escaping my mind. I think they play the Titans and some other teams coming up, so it's not too difficult. I know they have the Patriots in there as well, so the competition isn't going to be to the level of the 49ers, so that's better. It gives them a better opportunity to work some things out and kind of gain some confidence going forward, but at least now they know where they need to be. But in terms of talking about where we need to be as a show, we need to move on to the next segment now, talking about my picks at the best rookies that impressed me the most after week one. We're going to go through 5 through 1 in that order and just talk about some of the young guys that really impressed me overall in week one. Xavier Worthy's on there. A Steelers player's on there. Jaguars players are also featured on here. We're going to get into all of that when we return after this short break.